Reality Check with Craig Price.
Oh, right. Sorry.
I'm an idiot. 4 minutes in and I'm already wrong. I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me. Craig, shut up.
Hey, I need you guys to do these things.
You're like a beautiful mind. I'm more like Forrest Gump. So it's... Welcome to yet another edition of Reality Check with Craig Price. I am your host, Craig, and we've got a great show for you today. Kind of an intimidating guest for me. We've got Texas Radio Hall of Famer Dayna Steele is on the show, and you know, this podcast is the internet's version of the radio, kind of on-demand radio, but it's always intimidating when someone like Dayna comes on the show because she is a true professional. This is her career has been speaking on the radio, speaking on the microphone. She's so much comfortable on it. I am constantly not comfortable on it. I'm hopefully getting more comfortable on it. I'm hoping you can find it that I'm getting more comfortable on it, but when you have someone who has that many years behind them, who have done this for so long, who know what they're doing and can walk in, eyes closed, and get it done like a true pro, it can be a little intimidating. And she's going to be talking about branding, which is a subject I'm not very good at, I'm not very familiar with. I understand the concept of branding. I don't like the word branding itself. Branding is something you do to animals. You burn in the logo of your farm and brand these animals. And so the scarlet letter is branding. The, dunce caps are branding. But so is Coca-Cola's Wave, so is, You've Got Mail. That's branding. So there's all kinds of things that are branding, and there's a saying that if you don't do your own branding, people will brand you. Well, that is not true. People will brand you regardless of your branding. Unless you have a multi-million-dollar campaign that can overwhelm any natural grassroots branding that's going on out there, you are going to get stuck with the brand that you are. And in fact, Dayna's going to talk about that to some degree, how she was always being asked questions about the rock stars that she dealt with and what's it like on the radio, and she's trying to make a living as an entrepreneur. She's done some other things, and she didn't want to get into that position, but it happens. You get into certain brands. My brand has become the realist, the reality-based programming, reality-based keynotes, reality-based training, because my clients have told me the reason they hire me is because they thought I had the most realistic approach. My thought process was a much more realistic than they had seen before. I talk about real life stuff, not just best case scenarios. So sometimes, despite your best efforts, your branding comes to you. You don't find the brand finds you. And so I have found Dayna Steele to bring to you to talk about branding. How did you like the unconference?
Oh, I loved it. Just, you know what? It was the relationships. I'm always about the relationships, and it was the people that I met. I mean, you and I have been communicating back and forth on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
So it was nice to walk into a sea of faces I didn't know and immediately zero in on you and go, it's price points. Price points.
Oh, it's also like, it's faces you do know. It's just people you don't. It's like the only way I recognize some people is just by their picture, and
it's like, he looks just like his Twitter picture. I so appreciate that, by the way.
Well, when I was an actor, that's what the casting directors used to say, because they go, your headshot looks just like you.
I was like, what a concept.
And I go, isn't that the point?
Which, by the way, if anyone, for all the millions of people listening to this podcast, please don't put your dog, your child, a cartoon character, or a famous actor as your profile picture. I want to see you. I want to see you. That drives me crazy.
I see people who put cartoon pictures of themselves, and that drives me crazy.
I know it's like Twitter Cartoon Day or whatever. I don't care.
But it's like, no, there's actual someone did a caricature at the fair.
Yeah, no.
And it's like, you don't look that good. Because two things happen. Either they exaggerate the worst qualities of you, or they exaggerate the best qualities of you. And it's like, no, your skin's not that smooth, your hair's not that nice. Put you on there.
Just put you on there. So no, the unconference was great. One of the things that Neen James had asked me to do was
second episode.
Right. She was one of the organizers. She had asked me if I would befriend one of the presenters and sort of, show her around if she needed any help, like I knew anything being a newbie there, but okay, I will. And that was Vivica von Rosen, the LinkedIn expert. And I mean, within minutes, we became long lost sister friends. She's coming here to stay at the house in a couple of weeks. And So, I got a lot of information out of it, but I also formed some new relationships. Met Waldo Waldman, your wingman.
Yeah, the Air Force guy.
We basically do the same thing. I do it with rock stars. He does it with pilots, or that didn't come out right, but whatever.
Depends on who the rock star or the pilot is. Actually, I think you do it with pilots.
Yeah. That came to my mind as it came out of my mouth. But
and for those of you who don't know, I am here with Dayna Steele.
Who's married to a pilot,
yes.
which is why I do it with pilots
and
not rock stars.
And you are the first Hall of Famer that I've got on the show. You're not the first Hall of Famer I know, but you're the first, because I will say that my cousin, Craig Kendall, get a little plug out to him, he is in the New Hampshire Country Music Hall of Fame.
Well, there you go.
But you're the first Hall of Famer on the show. And
that was very strange to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Well,
I mean, it's very
how do you get into it?
It's very humble.
What are the requirements?
You work your ass off.
No, I got that point. Every Hall of Famer has to work their butt off. I mean, there's no lazy Hall of Famer in there.
Somebody nominated me, and I really don't know. And
do you have to wait 5 years like baseball?
I don't remember what the criteria was, but it was to be with these radio greats, and I mean, we're talking some just phenomenal radio greats, and to be inducted at the same time along with them.
Who were you inducted with? Not that I would know them. Unfortunately, I'm not from the area.
There were a couple from Dallas. The number one would be Crash Collins. I grew up listening to Crash on the radio in high school. You weren't cool if you didn't listen to Crash. And I remember the first time I got to meet Crash when I had gotten into radio. I was just like the newbie, and I was like, oh my God, that's Crash. It's Crash. And then, we started to work together. We started to do appearances together, and then we became very, very dear friends. So there were two things to that: to be inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame with the DJ that, I idolized in high school, who also happens to be one of my dearest friends now. So it was fun. Of course, through the entire ceremony, which, bless their hearts, they worked so hard to put on a great ceremony.
I can tell you're from Texas, because bless your heart means those poor idiots.
Oh my God, it went on forever. I finally got up and said, in fact, as a part of my acceptance speech. You
didn't flick the light like they do in the...
No.
Give them the signal?
As a part of my acceptance speech, I pointed out that the batteries on my 11-year-old's DS were getting ready to run out, and they were going to really need to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, my kid's going to have nothing to do in a minute.
He's getting really bored with all these people talking about, all the old days in radio. But really, all I could think of through the whole thing was, thank God for Botox.
So, that's the only thing you were thinking about the whole time?
Thank God for Botox. Oh my God, I am so glad.
And as for someone who's in radio, that's kind of like, you don't really have to worry about that. Because you actually don't have a face for radio. You have a face for television, which is unusual, because I've been on the radio. I've been interviewed by, DJs all over the country, and a lot of them should not have photos taken.
Well, the one thing I learned in radio a long time ago, even before there were cameras everywhere and, people video podcasting and live streaming and everything else, was that, there was a certain thing that people expected when I walked into a room or walked up on a stage, and they still expect it. I mean, you were joking about I weigh 87 pounds, which I don't. But people
88.
expect me, in my presentation, I use a lot of pictures of, me with the Rolling Stones and hanging out with Van Halen and hanging out with Crosby, Stills and Nash, which somebody the other day said, is that Meatloaf? No, it's not Meatloaf. But
I've met Meatloaf, and some girl went, oh, it's Mr. Loaf. And he goes, you can call me Meat.
But you need to, there's a certain, your brand. I am my brand. And I need to look like what people expect, and that's what I also learned early on in my early 20s when I started in radio. You're right. I met a lot of these people that I'd listened to on the radio forever and thought, oh my gosh, they don't look anything like what I expected.
No, and I find that, I worked for the Astros for a couple years, and I can't remember the name, the gentleman's announcer. Bob Ford.
I can do my Bob Ford.
When you see him, he's got this booming, deep, like almost like
unbelievable, the voice of God,
but a cowboy God too. It's like he's got that. It's just enough twang. It's just enough twang to know that he's from the area. It's Houston Astros, and he gets that boom, and then you see him. He's like 5'2", and he's got.
No, he's not. He's like 5'5". No,
he was shorter than me, and I'm only 5'8". So anybody shorter than me, I automatically lock them into the 5'2". But he
didn't
funny.
If you ask somebody who's never met me and who's only heard me, they will say the same thing more often than not than people when I started in radio in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s. What I come to find out, what they really expected was an extremely tall, I've heard the phrase big boned or big boobed.
Busty.
They expected Mae West, a modern version of Mae West, just this ballsy, heavy boob, brassy, blonde, Dolly Parton. And I'm 5'2", and I weigh little over 100 pounds.
Slightly more than 88 pounds.
Yeah, I weigh more than the 88 pounds. You said 87 pounds.
But you are a small person. And
I am a small person. Yeah. Which is funny because when I pose for pictures after speeches, everybody always wants it, and then they post it on Facebook, and when I get home, I go and look it up. I'm stunned at how short I am. Yeah. Because I really think I'm 6 feet tall.
And it's you and everybody's shoulders. You're right up there with them.
But it's back to, it's that, yes, a lot of people on the radio don't look like what you think they're going to look like. But I figured it out early on. People say, "Oh, you're so lucky." Well, yeah, I'm lucky. But one of the things I figured out early on is you are your brand, and how you dress and how you present yourself. I wanted to be a rock star DJ.
Well, now I feel
I wanted to be.
I should have shaved coming out.
You look fabulous. No, that's that very trendy look now. You look trendy.
Yeah.
That Brad Pittish. It is. Yeah, it is.
more like Peach Pittish, but.
But it is. It's what people expect, and you have to. It's how you look. It's how you act. It's what you deliver that makes people remember you, and you're consistent with your brand. How do you want to be perceived? Is what I've looked at my entire career. So when I walk in a room and I wanted to be one of the top rock DJs, I dressed like them, I acted like them, I was one of the rock stars, I threw my shoulders back until I finally got to that position.
And it was the 80s when you really got major. And so there's a lot of leather and a lot of big hair and loop earrings. And so you really had the tools that, to really play it up.
The big, not only was it the 80s, but I'm a Texas girl, so it was big hair. I said, there were a good 10 years of my life where I had a headphone trench. Right, and I'm making, that big poofy 80s hair, but then you'd have to wear the headphones for 5 hours a day. So I always had like this trench in my head. And
so you're a local Houstonian.
A fourth generation.
Fourth generation. And,
yep.
And so, what was your reason to going into radio? What
wanted a date with somebody?
You went on a radio?
I wanted a date.
Oh, I
wanted a date.
You wanted a date with a DJ?
I went off to college to be a doctor because I figured how hard could that be? That sounded pretty impressive. And I, pass out at the sight of blood. So I changed my major every semester at Texas A&M, and I met this DJ, Jeff Lowe. He was a DJ on a radio station in Bryan, and when you're in College Station and you meet a DJ from Bryan, that was like the biggest rock star. He was huge. He was this big star to me. And he was really cute, and I really wanted a date. And looking back now, it wasn't so much a dare as he was just making fun of the new student radio station that was hiring at Texas A&M. And I went in search of it and, talked to the program director, auditioned, and they hired me. And I never got the date with Jeff. And I used to tell this story a lot in my speech until I got a call one day. It was early on, the early days of Facebook, when Facebook first started to branch out to other people. And I get this note going, "Hey, I heard you were talking about me." And it was for Lord's sake, this can't be the Jeff Lowe. He's like, "Sure
That's what Facebook seems to be, is a magnet for ex-girlfriends and boyfriends and people you don't really...
These people not have jobs, or they just sit there and waiting for you to log on and go, "Want to be my friend?" It's like, wait a minute, you ripped my heart out of my chest, stomped it in the dirt, squished it with your heel, and walked off without a care in the world, and now you want me to be my friend? Hell yes, because I want you to see how good I'm doing without you. Yes, I'll friend you.
Good living's the best revenge.
I say yes to everybody. Okay.
See, and for me, I don't think of these people, so I don't even understand. Like, I'll get ex-girlfriends from my friends who I didn't like at the time, and they're like, "Oh, be my friend," and I'm like, "No." And then I get like an email somehow because, being who we are, there's a lot more access to us than if we were John Bon Jovi. If I send an email to John Bon Jovi, he's not going to get it. If you send it to me, Craig at Speaker Craig Price, you'll get it. And I'll probably, knowing me, since I'm such an addict to my iPhone, I'll probably email you back within 20 minutes. So I ignored her, and about 2 weeks later, I got an email going, "How dare you ignore me, blah, 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 blah." And and all I said was, "This is why I didn't like you then. This is why I don't like you now."
You can't do that. You can't do it. Okay, here, I'm going to, it's your show, but I'm going to
go ahead. That's why that's the kind of person I am. I'm my brand. My brand is to be me as much as possible, Warts and all.
There you go. Well, my son, who just turned 15 and, is the resident IT support here in the house, says to me a few months back, or gosh, it's been about a year now, he goes, why do you have almost 5,000 friends on Facebook?
Yeah, see.
And I said, because I have 5,000 books in the closet that I need to sell. So, no, but I've always collected people. When Charlie and I first started dating, Charlie the Wonder Husband, he was we went on a trip to New York City. Got in a cab. The 5 minutes we were in the cab, I knew the cab driver's name, where he was from, how many kids he had, what he used to do, what he really wanted to do,
Now, was that you asking, or is that just, because I get that, but that's more of them confessing to me.
No, I ask.
See, I don't want that information, and I get it.
See, I do. I think everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story that's fascinating.
Well, everyone has a story. I don't know how fascinating each and every one of them are.
Oh, they are. You just got to dig. You got to find the story. It's there.
You've got to suffer through it to get to the kernel of greatness.
That's it.
But I don't know if I can do that in a cab ride in New York.
I will talk to anybody and I will ask anybody anything. I got an email a couple of weeks ago, or about a year and a half ago, from a girlfriend of mine. She's very well off, socialite, very well connected here in Houston. And I get this email saying, hey, having lunch with Governor Perry on Thursday. You want to go? And I'm like, what? So I finally email her back and go, Christy, I think you meant, it must have auto-filled in my name.
Yeah, it's
you
a
must
different
not
Dayna.
have meant me. And she, oh no, I definitely meant you. So I go to this lunch, and it's all of these, heavy hitter Republicans. I'm a liberal. All these heavy hitting Republicans, and they're all kissing the ring, and I'm like, and what about the space program, and what about education? And we're talking, and he's going, look, I'm on Twitter, and I'm like, no, you're on Twitter, and I'm teaching him how to, tweet on Twitter, and nobody else is talking to the man, and I'm arguing with him, and I'm asking questions, and finally, I said, I got one more question, and he goes, oh, for God's sakes, now what? That's when you've gotten under the governor's skin.
I don't think it takes much to get under his skin.
I said boxers or briefs, and he goes, that is none of your damn business. So I thought my work is done here.
There you go. Because you're more of an extrovert, but I have no problems talking with anybody either if they come talk to me. So, I used to work in New Hampshire and at the state government, and I would see the governor, Stephen Merrill at the time, and I'd see him all the time. And
you never talked to him, did you?
Oh, no, well, he would talk to me. I have to go here, you need this. Oh, yeah. Well, after a while, once I get to know you, now you're not a stranger anymore. So I see him every day for 3 years. You're not afraid to say anything.
See, I'll talk to anybody.
But I also learned early on that, and you can back this up, that famous people are just people.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I worked in New York City, you name a famous person, I've met them. And more than just, they were across the room. I talked to them, like, Tom Hanks, Steve Martin. I babysat Woody Allen for a day. Things like that.
What'd you do?
I worked at the Museum of Modern Art.
Oh.
And I was at the visitor service.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah, and so I was I
love that.
When I was in the building, I was the celebrity liaison.
The babysitter.
Right, because I'm the only one that didn't go crazy when, Clint Eastwood came in the building. Clint Eastwood walked in, and it was him and his...
Did you make his day?
I did not make his day. He made my day because
okay.
He was him and his wife, his beautiful wife, and his very young daughter. Because you have to realize he's like 80 now. So he was like 70 at the time. Space Cowboys,
right.
It was just coming out, and so they were going to premiere it at the thing. And he comes in, and my dad was going to be there the next day in New York.
Oh, that would have been great.
And I said, I told my dad that you were going to be here, and he remembers watching you when you were on Rawhide. And he looked at me with I think his eyes were open. But he was like, your dad must be old. And I'm like, yes, he is. But not as old as you are, sir. And so, but they're just regular people. You have to make sure that you don't go crazy when you meet them.
But see, my favorite thing is not so much, and I was around so many of the celebrities, but is just, again, it's the cab driver, it's the guy who picks up your trash, it's,
I treat them the same.
Martha, who works at the post office, sweeping the floors when I go to get my mail at 7 a.m. I love to know what these people's stories are. But I got a great story for you. I guess Dak, he's 15 now, and my son, he's the pretentious one.
Dak, is he named after a Star Wars?
Actually, no, that's his NASA acronym for Dayna and Charlie's kid.
Oh.
Which is a whole other story.
Because Dak is a pilot in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I thought Charlie would like to know that.
Oh, see, I'm sure he knows that. But no, it's Dayna and Charlie's kid. But anyway, he must have been about 5, and he goes, hey, can I ask you a question? I mean, he talked like that when he was 5. I was like, what? He goes, how come you tell us we can't talk to strangers? Yet everywhere we go, you talk to every stranger there is. So it's what Mommy does for a living.
That's right. When you start making money doing that, you can talk to whoever you want.
But here I had been, don't talk to strangers, don't talk
Sure.
to strangers. And here Mommy is. Mommy walks in a restaurant and goes, hey, how are you doing? Talk to everybody.
Yeah, that's my dad's like that. I'm not like that. I'm the one that I don't mind people talking to me. And I will be glad to engage with anybody who wants to email or talk or whatever. I'm not.
But you don't initiate.
But I don't initiate because I don't, I in my life, I mean, you've done a lot more than I have, but in my life, I've had enough of.
I think I scare people sometimes because I will. I'll talk to anybody. There was a lady sitting in a Range Rover today at Barnes and Noble, and my kid thinks he wants a Range Rover. Yeah, right. Did you rob a bank? But so I knocked on the window, and she just looked at me like. I mean, this is in River Oaks, the ritzy neighborhood of Houston. Oh my God, I'm knocking on her window, and she rolls down the window, and I'm like,
I'm getting carjacked by Dayna Steele?
My son wants to buy one of these cars. What do you think? And so I got some quotes from her to give to him.
But so that we'll get back to where, because this all ties together, because I think a lot of that probably came out in your audition. That's why you were able to get the audition to be on the radio
back then. So that's how I got into it.
I think as you progressed up the ranks, so to speak, because you didn't stay at the Bryant College Station for too long.
No, I didn't.
Not many people really do.
No.
So you went. I
was at KAMU for just a couple of months, and then WTAW FM, the top 40 station in town. Watched the Aggies win. WTAW called me. They were getting ready to be hit with an EEOC suit because they didn't have any women.
Oh yeah.
And I was like the only woman they knew of in town. This is when you still had to have a license, and I had gone downtown to the FCC.
So you were the
Houston.
token.
I was the token. So they brought me in. I did that probably for 4 or 5, maybe 6 months, and I heard a radio, and I discovered my passion. I discovered something I truly loved, and that was radio. I was getting to the point I wasn't going to class anymore. All I wanted to do was hang out at the radio station. And I heard a radio station in Houston advertising for a sales secretary, and this was in the fall semester of my sophomore year. So I finished out the semester. I guess it was the very beginning of the spring semester I heard the ad, and snuck into town, did the interview, told him I had no desire to be on the air. I just wanted to work in radio. Got the job, told him I could type. I'm a firm believer you can fake anything until you figure it out. Told my parents I was quitting school, moving back home. I'd been there for 2 weeks as a secretary. Hated it. Hated the job. Hated it. I was scheduling the commercials.
Oh, that's even better.
Hated it. Hated it. Went into the program director, told him I had a license. Again, this is, you still had to know, you had to go take a test at the FCC.
Yeah, you can't just let anybody on there.
I mean, anybody can now. But I went in, I had just turned 18.
And if they can't, we podcast.
There you go. Because see, I went to college when I was 16. Who knows what they want to do then? And, I had just turned 18. I told the program director I had a license, that I had experience and I wanted to be on the air, and he basically patted me on the head, laughed at me, and said, all right, kid, whatever, get back to work. That night, this is why I'm a firm believer in let people know what you need and ask for it, because you never know. That night, the overnight guy didn't show up, and the program director and the other DJs were all together drinking and getting high, and no one was capable of going on the air.
Drinking and getting high in radio? I do not believe that. Don't you need a license?
So they called me and said, they thought it was funny. You want to be on the radio? You're on the radio. Next night, guy didn't show up again, and I was on the radio for the next 22 years.
At the same station?
No, I stayed at that station, I think, for just about a year. Went on to...
what was the big station? Because I'm sure you had...
Yeah, there were several, but I was lucky to stay in Houston my entire career.
Yeah.
KLOL, 101, the big station.
That's the one where I had the most experience.
Yeah, so I started there in August of 1982 because the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. DJ, I had interviewed there several times, and they just kept telling me, you don't have the experience, nothing's open, you don't have the experience, nothing's open. And it was the week after the big Texas Jam in the Astrodome when there was no delay then. And
somebody dropped an F-bomb?
There was an old saying we used to always joke about in the radio station, and she let it slip on the air, which was, here's more Zep, you effers. And that went out live on the air and live all over the Astrodome. And in 1982, you didn't do that. That was just, so she was fired and I got the job. So, and I never said that on the radio. So I was with KLOL for about 16 years. I left for a year to go try acting in LA.
When was your last year at KLOL?
My last day at KLOL was February the 3rd, 1996, when I went into labor with Dak Justice.
See, and I didn't start getting on KLOL until 97.
So
that's why, because I was on Stevens and Pruitt every once in a while.
Okay.
and things like that because I was doing stand-up at the time. So KLOL is like the home station that I know of. So that's
where it came from.
So
that's
I missed you. But you didn't have that one slip up because like for me, I come from the Northeast.
No, I unfortunately talk like a sailor. We have a swear jar in the kitchen, and I put a 20 in it every week. It's a quarter a word. I just put a 20 in there to keep everybody happy. And then we donate it to charity at the end of the year.
And so you've put several people through college.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
But see, that's what I have to do mentally when I speak is because I'm from the Northeast. We say the F word like they say commas down here.
And see, I do too, and I'm not proud of it. But
throughout my whole talk, I got to go. Don't say the F word. Don't say the F word. Don't say the F word.
The minute I turn on the mic, I just know, and the minute it goes off,
But that's your professionalism.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
I asked my 11-year-old. He's like, "Mom, that's a quarter."
Thankfully, I have never dropped the F-bomb in my corporate world. I mean, as a stand-up,
I drop it all the time.
Do you? Good for you.
Yep.
I haven't got to that point yet.
I'm sorry, I talk like a sailor. And
there you go. I'm going to pay you for it. I haven't got to that point yet because
I don't do it in my speeches.
That's what I meant.
Okay, no.
I'm talking about. I say it every day. When I wake up. F word.
Walking on stage is probably like turning on the mic for me.
Yeah,
I know exactly what it is what the client wants me to do, what their expectations are, what they hope the audience walks away from, and that's what I concentrate on giving them for that 45 minutes to an hour.
No, that's why that's why in my own mind I'm like, don't say the F word because I've gone. And that's about as dirty as I've gotten because I was going to say it. Mm-hmm. And then I would actually say, and man, I was going to use a really bad word there, get a big laugh.
There's a new thing I want to use. I talk about what a rock star is and what makes a rock star. And Steven Tyler had the best line on American Idol the other night. And I use it in I've had several speeches since, and I've used it in a couple, and I felt like others maybe weren't the appropriate place to use it. But what he said, I really can't paraphrase because he summed it up so beautifully after Casey sang. He said, "You know what I love about you is your confidence." He said, "You have a crazy ass, out of control ego, and that's what makes a rock star. You've got to believe in yourself before you can believe in anyone else." And just that word crazy ass.
Sure.
There are some audiences I can say it, some I can't. But that is what makes anybody a rock star in any business, whether it's music or radio or finance or mortgage or banking or whatever.
But you're not advocating being a narcissistic a-hole.
No, but you gotta have a crazy ass, out of control ego and believe. You've got to believe you can do something before you convince other people you can do it.
Sure, there's got to be a confidence factor, but I mean, there's also
crazy ass, out of control ego.
Well, once you get out of control, that's when you get into the narcissism, and that's when you get, and that's because I come from an AV background where I worked at a hotel, and I saw a lot of motivational speakers that are somewhat big named, and they're jerks.
Oh yeah.
And it's because they've got that out of control ego, and it's like, well, I would like someone who has a controlled ego to some degree where they at least treat human beings like human beings.
I had somebody say to me in San Antonio the other day, I did a big event there, and they said, we hire a lot of speakers in your price range, and you are the only one who has ever said pretty much yes to everything. Can you be here at 5:30 for sound check? Sure.
Yeah.
Can you bring extra books? Sure. Can you stand over here? Sure. Can you use this mic instead? Sure. The lights aren't working. Are you okay?
Go with it.
Sure. I don't care.
And I think that also comes from your experience as a DJ.
The show must go on.
And as a stand-up, you got to do it.
Working or not. In fact, a lot of the microphones that were having some problems with sound, and I finally told the meeting organizer, I said, you know what? This is a room of, I think it was 400 or 500 people. I can stand on a table in the middle of the room and make myself heard. So you go do what you have to do to work everything else out, but don't worry about me. When you introduce me, there will be a 45-minute show. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and
if I have to hold a flashlight on myself, there'll be a show.
And I think some speakers are difficult on purpose to try to elevate their status to some degree.
No, the biggest rock. I've been around and worked with the biggest rock stars in the world, and I always told people, in these interviews and back when I was still in radio, the biggest artists were usually the nicest ones to work with because they had gotten to the top, like John Bon Jovi and Mick Jagger, and Sammy Hagar. These guys stay at the top because not only are they good, but it takes more than talent. Not only are they good, they are appreciative, and they show up on time, and they do what is expected of them.
I'm not saying those difficult speakers are the best speakers, or the ones that make the most money. I think the ones that are difficult do it to elevate their status.
Right, because they think that's what people at a higher status do. And I'm just saying the people at the highest status don't do that.
And I heard that, like Van Halen, they would put in their rider, their little contract, that they had to have a bowl of green M&Ms.
No.
Was that?
It was brown M&Ms, and they had to be removed.
Right, because they did that for a reason, though.
Right, it's in the book. The reason they did that is because if there were brown M&Ms in the, you have a contract that states out all the details, and then the writer would talk about what needed to be in the dressing room, what kind of dressing room, but it also did all the stage requirements and the lighting and all of that. That's what's in a rider. Mm-hmm. They learned early on if there were brown M&Ms in the bowl, odds are the promoter either hadn't read the rider or had blown the rider off, at which point they would walk out. They would not step on that stage until their stage manager, their tour manager, and the promoter went through the rider line by line, because more often than not, it meant that the stage or the lighting trusses were not to safety requirements. They had skimped on things.
Yeah, no, they weren't paying attention. If they weren't paying attention to the contract.
Right. But that's why they did it. Because it meant the stage was probably not safe for the band or the fans sitting close by.
Right. So they had a reason, a very legitimate and a very.
But they never told people that because you want that rock star bad boy.
Well, and it only came out decades later.
Yeah.
But they do that, and it's very smart of them to do that. But I think what happens is they hear that story, other people hear that story, and they go, oh, well, I've got to trash the room, or I've got
to do this.
Yeah. And so I think that's the myth of the rock star versus what they're actually like. Because I've met almost all the famous people I've met who were nice, who were really big. The bigger they were, the nicer they were.
Well, they also have an incredible work ethic. For example, there's just little things that I put in my book and little things I've learned since, like Steven Tyler. He runs or does Pilates or yoga several hours a day. He has to keep that skinny little body and be able to move at that age, and still tour. But I mean, he has really stringent requirements in his rider. Things like he has steamed salmon and steamed broccoli at 6:00 prior to a show. Then he stretches for an hour. And you don't mess with that, but he knows what he has to do to be Steven Tyler and put on a performance.
Right. It's not just to be the rock star.
Right.
It's a rock star, but he's doing it as part of his regiment to be the best show that he can be.
Very disciplined. Very disciplined.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm glad you're here, because I want the reality of what it's like, because I think the reality is they do that for a reason. It's not just to be difficult.
Yeah, the reality of it is being on the road that much sucks. That's the reality of it.
One of the reasons they try to go for a lot of stuff is because they are traveling from town to town. They get to be home.
Yeah.
And so they do really want the hotel room, and they want, if they're going to be there for 2-3 days, to be as homey as it can possibly be. Had to remind them of, so that there is definitely reasons for it. But I think a lot of the regular folk, the civilians, so to speak, just think it's
a party every night.
Yeah.
If it was a party, can you get me backstage? No, I can't get you backstage. Everybody's busy. They're working back there. And there is debauchery, and there is,
sure.
The sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But they also know at what point they have to stop, and most of them.
The ones that are still around.
The ones that are around. Well, look at, I wrote about him in the book. Robin Crosby, who was the looked like, blonde mane, rock god, 6'4" of Rat, when they were selling millions of dollars worth of CDs or albums then, and concert tickets. He died 400 pounds and penniless in L.A. I mean, he took it too far. Yeah. Axl Rose, look at him. He looks awful. He's taken it too far. Look at Bon Jovi. Damn, that man's disciplined. He looks great.
Well, yeah, he looks. I mean, I think that's what Steven Tyler is supposed to be looking like, because Steven Tyler looks like he's a 65-year-old woman.
Well, he's always looked like a 65. He looked when he was 30, he looked like a 30-year-old woman. I went back and looked.
He looks like my Aunt Jo.
I went back and looked at some pictures of when Steven first got out of rehab, because I've got some pictures of him. Doing an event for us. No, he looked great.
Oh, did he?
Because
right out of rehab?
Well, he'd been in rehab for some time. He was looking great, and the band had just released their first album after they'd gotten back together and sobered up, and he was doing a rock and roll auction for us. We were standing on a counter at a record store together in Sharpstown Mall in Houston, and then he came over to the apartment afterwards because we were having a little party, a celebration party for the auction, and he did. I was looking at the pictures the other day, and I looked at him and went, he looks like a woman there.
Does he? Okay.
Does. These beautiful lips, and it's like, yeah, he does.
Well, and she's passed away. But my Aunt Jo.
Your Aunt Jo.
He looks like my Aunt Josephine.
He does. He looks like everybody's aunt.
So you had the baby. Yeah, he's in the other room right now as we speak.
Right. Married a geek, gave birth to little geeks. They're all out there with their computers and iPads and laptops and whatever, geeking out.
And was that pretty much the beginning of the end of your radio career?
Yeah, it really was. I'd always wanted to do television. So about 3 months after Dak was born, I was approached by a small startup station here in Houston, and I went to work for them for about a year. And what I learned, it was great. I learned I hate television. I learned that I don't like the teleprompter. I don't like being told what to say. I'd come from, ad-libbing and doing it myself for a really long time. And, so I didn't like that at all. But I did it for about a year, and then somebody came to me and presented me with an idea to do talk radio. It was a new station starting up. And I tried that for about 6 months. I was awful. I was listening to people like Rush Limbaugh and all these other talk shows, and I was trying to be something that I wasn't, and I was awful, and I just gave up.
Well, as a liberal listening to Rush Limbaugh, I think it was just the anger.
It was awful.
It could have been just all the resentment and the hate that you were, and then you were.
But he was, what I really hate to admit is I started watching Rush. No, I still don't like him, but I started watching him on Hank Haney. I've gotten into golf, and I loved watching Rush go from this pompous ass to kissing Hank Haney's feet, thanking him for everything he taught him about golf.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not a big fan of that whole side of radio and television, but I do respect the fact that they know what they're doing.
Well, and what I discovered is I loved talk radio. I'm just not, I'm not male, I'm not conservative, and I'm not pissed off. So that made talk radio, made me a little obsolete in talk radio.
Yeah, because talk radio is all about argument.
Yeah, conservative, pissed off.
Well, it doesn't
males.
have to be conservative. Even when they had Air America.
Yeah, they're all pissed off.
And that definitely is the pissed off part. I'm just saying you don't have to be conservative, though.
I just, I was interviewing authors and celebrities, and then they ended up selling the radio station, changing the format, and I left. I was like, and I ended up starting a few businesses, and that's kind of when the catalyst, when I discovered that I was a businesswoman and that I loved just the whole process of trying to, succeed and make a buck every day and deliver a product, and how am I gonna make it better the next day? How am I gonna get even better? How am I gonna deliver more to my customers and my fans? And so I ended up doing that. I started thespacestore.com. It was a NASA store before NASA started one.
And your husband being a NASA scientist.
pilot, yeah. So I ended up selling that to a NASA contractor and ran it for them for 5 years.
Right.
And finally said, I can't do this anymore. Somebody talked me into going back into talk radio, so I did a syndicated business show for about a year, and I talked to so many business authors, and I decided, why do business books have to be so boring?
Exactly. That's what
so I wrote my book, which
that's great.
Which is Rock to the Top: What I Learned About Success from the World's Greatest Rock Stars, and that came about because people were always asking me to come speak to. I call them the chicken and rice lunch circuit.
Well, that's what I was going to ask: is how you guys started? Because right now, I think mostly what you do is speaking. You're mostly keynoting.
That's probably my biggest thing is keynoting all over the country.
And how that for you, it's a lot more logical segue, like. If you meet somebody and you go, well, how'd you get into it? And then they were doing this and they were a VP of a company and then somebody asked them to speak at some place and then boom. And it's like, really? That's kind of a...
Yeah, the speaking career took off pretty fast for me because I was already so comfortable in front of people. And
the hardest skill you've already had.
So that I didn't have any problem with. But I have to say, people started asking me to come speak about business, and I did a thing called The Art of Doing Business, and I would come talk to these groups, and I was awful, and they hated it, and I hated it, and it was miserable. And so what I started doing was ending my speech early and asking, does anybody have any questions? And it never failed. The person that sat there with their arms crossed, rolling their eyes, bored out of their minds, would raise their hand and go, did you ever meet Van Halen?
Yeah.
And then I thought, no matter how hard I'm trying to turn my back, that's my brand. We get back to my brand. It's what people expect of me. I don't want to be a rock and roll radio chick anymore, but I did learn a lot from it. So I would use my examples.
You can't throw all that experience away.
And I never even looked at it as experience or business experience until I started trying to make my points by using examples, say, for example, the Rolling Stones and the tongue and how they brand and how they protect that brand, and, AC/DC, how they actually get a home-cooked meal with their families after the show because they know the importance. Little things like that I started using, and that's when I realized that the audience got quiet, I got engaged, they got engaged, and they were begging for more stories. And that's where it came from. And so I sat down and I wrote a book, and it turned into a speaking career. And now I'm trying to find time to finish the second book.
Yeah, as politicians they don't want to admit you can't avoid your past.
And I was trying to move on and be a respectable business person, and I found out no one wanted me to be respectable, and it's a lot more fun.
It's a lot, isn't it? You probably have more freedom than the average, especially a female speaker, because there's a lot of expectations, or at least what the typical example of the stereotypical female speaker.
I was at a business meeting today, and I got a text that I write a blog for Fast Company magazine. And one of the blogs that I had written in March was one of their most read blogs. And this person sitting across the table from me goes, well, what kind of blogs do you write? And I said, well, they're business blogs. They're probably rehashing all kinds of points that are in my book, because those are the things that I always try to talk about and always try, the rock star principles. I said, but I'm not your typical business writer. I probably offend as many people as I entertain, because I will write blogs like why Cher needs an effing business card and you don't, or why Cher doesn't need an effing business card and you do. I wrote a blog on how when you deliver customer service with a smile, you make more money, and it was based on my observations at the Hustler Club on Bourbon Street in New Orleans.
Well,
that
sure.
The girls who smiled had more dollars.
Yeah, but then wouldn't you say proper dental care would lead to more money at that point? Then could you extrapolate to that?
Just smile.
There you go.
So my business blogs are maybe a little irreverent.
Well, they should be.
But so was rock and roll.
And so are you.
Rock and roll is supposed to be on the edge.
See, and it bothers me. I mean, I don't like, you use it a lot, and everybody does. It's the brand. You are your brand, which makes me feel like I'm a box on a shelf somewhere. What you're really saying is you need to be who you are.
And it's where I'm comfortable. I love rock and roll music. I love the stories. I love the experiences. But I also love business, and I have been wildly successful. But it all comes down to somebody saying to me, you're so lucky. I hate that phrase.
Yeah.
And I'll say, yes, I am fortunate. I've got a great husband, great kids, a great life. But you know what? I have built all this.
Yeah.
I have envisioned.
It wasn't by accident.
And that secret. If you dream it, it'll come.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, bull. I dreamed it, I envisioned it, and then I got to work and made it happen 24/7.
It's not the law of attraction, it's the law of action. You got to get off your butt and do it, because if you just wish it's not going to happen.
I get up every morning. I get emails from people all the time going, what time did you send me that email? I get up between 4 and 5.
No.
And by 9 a.m. I'm exhausted because I've done so much work by then. So then I'll go play golf for 3 or 4 hours with Charlie. We'll go play golf, and then we'll go to lunch, and then we'll come back and we'll work again. People say, God, wow, you get to spend the whole morning playing golf. No.
I
spent 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours, writing,
mid-morning
sending
golfing.
emails. Yeah. I took a break when, when most people are sleeping, I'm working, and then I go play, and then I come back and work a little more.
Yeah, I don't get up at 4, but I'm up at 6 with the dogs. And yeah, that's the first thing I do is I check the emails and get the
Just what's the day going to bring? What
some
are
of the
my
annoying
priorities?
stuff that you need to go. Like, you think about what's going to happen today, but also see what I didn't do yesterday, just to get things ready for the day. I don't go golfing afterwards. I'll do something else or take the dog.
Well, I don't know if you could call it I do golf, but I try.
You hit a white ball with a stick.
I do.
On occasion.
Not very well.
Well, before I leave, the one thing I wanted to talk to you about that we haven't touched on yet is because you do a lot of media relations.
Yes.
And that was the biggest problem that I have, is I haven't been able to figure out because I talk on negativity, and that seems to be, and people like it after they see it. It's one of those things. I'm not a marketing person. I'm not a branding person. I'm trying to do what I do. I try to be me as much as I possibly can. That's my marketing strategy.
Right.
Because to me, I am selling me. I have an idea, but I don't think anybody else has that idea. I haven't seen anybody else have that idea. So really, it's me and my idea. And so I had the book come out, and my book came out probably a couple months after Charlie's.
Okay.
And being a supportive Houston author, I ran out and bought his book, and because I'm not sure he got mine, but that's fine. And but it's one of those things where I saw his exposure, his publicity. Obviously, he's writing a science fiction novel, and I wrote a self-help book.
Yeah, but you do the same thing. You do the same thing.
But I saw how great his publicity campaign was.
Well, first you have to sleep with me.
That could be a problem.
But that's what I do. I put it
Don't
together.
say that, because if I get a written agreement from my wife, you're going to have to put my book on the top there.
You have to figure out who your audience is. There's so many things that go into it.
Yeah, and I'm finding that. I mean, I also have expectations set that aren't over the moon. I know the confidence is there. I know I've got a great idea. I know I've got a great book. I know I've got a great presentation. It's just a matter of getting it known.
Right, and putting it out to the audience. You got to figure out where is your audience and how do you reach them and what are they reading and what are they looking at. I knew that Charlie's audience was, first of all, our friends and family. Second of all, all the people that follow us combined on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, social media. And then it was also, he's a longtime NASA pilot. He's a longtime sci-fi fan, so those are the kind of people we started targeting.
Well, that's what I was saying. He had science fiction, so he had a little bit more of a known audience. At least you could point the gun in the right direction.
Right. So. And then we did a couple of things, like we offered free T-shirts. We did an iPad contest. What was the hottest thing last year? An iPad. Yeah. Well, it was go and write a review on Amazon and have a chance to win an iPad, and we gave an iPad away. But what happened was it cost me $542 to buy an iPad and ship it to the winner. But in the meantime, what we did, the first contest was post something positive about Specific Impulse by Charles Justice with a link to the Amazon buy page, and send us a screenshot or send us, just make us aware of it so if we don't see it. And then I set up Google Alerts so that I could see, and it went all over the country. It spread everywhere, to people we didn't know, because everybody wanted to be eligible to win the iPad. I couldn't have paid for that much advertising with $500.
No, not at all.
I couldn't have touched that much advertising. So sometimes a little contest. One of the main characters in the book, Charlie's book, was named Fred, the computer. So we did a whole "What Would Fred Do" campaign, and we have stickers and mugs. And I went to one of the biggest websites, one of the biggest sites on Facebook is a kid named Fred. He's got like 1 million followers.
Just kid named Fred?
Yeah. So I'm like posting stuff on Fred. So it's just looking for those opportunities. But it all boils down to being able to say what you do in the shortest sentence possible that makes people want to ask more, and then you give them the next bit. People say, "Charlie, what do you do?" My husband goes, "I'm the author of Specific Impulse." What's that? They ask me on a plane, "What do you do?" I say, "I create rock stars." That inevitably makes somebody go, "Well, what does that mean?" Yeah.
No, I'm thankfully I kind of do that, because I go, "What do you do?" And I go, "I speak on negativity and how it's useful." And they go, "What?" And they go, "How's that useful?" And then I give them a little bit, and because I don't like talking about me. That's kind of hard to do when you're a self-employed business person who.
You have to learn to talk about you.
Of course, obviously I do. Otherwise, I would be broke. So, I do talk about me, and people who listen to the podcast go, "You don't shut up about you." Isn't it about the guests? No, it's about me.
Before we run out of time, let me tell you something I heard yesterday, and I'm guilty of this. Think about this and then figure out if you're guilty of this. Do you communicate or connect? Most of us spend all day long communicating, but we never take the time to stop and actually connect with anyone we're communicating with.
I would say 50-50.
I would say it's probably not if you really stop and look at what you're doing.
Well, you're asking me my opinion.
Yeah.
My opinion is that means I'm definitely not connecting with every single person.
Right, but most people communicate way more than they connect. And really stop and think of everybody you communicated with today. Did you really, truly connect with them? Or are you just talking at them? Or are you just communicating at them? Or did you form a connection?
I don't know. You could tell me that today.
All right, we'll find out.
Because I've got one, and this is like I've been in a little bubble today. Today is only the third person I've talked to at all today.
So we've connected. We've given each other advice.
And your husband was on earlier.
Fun conversation.
We connected with him, and I had lunch with a friend of ours.
And you bought his book, so we like that.
I bought his book way in advance, and then you guys sent me a signed copy, which I have kept pristine. Because I always thought like writing a book was like signing life insurance. You've now become more valuable dead than alive. Mm-hmm. My own father said, "Please sign the book, but don't personalize it."
Oh, yeah, because it's worth more.
It's worth more, And I go, "Well, excuse me?" He goes, "Oh, no, I heard if you personalize it, it's worth less."
Yeah, you can get more at half-price books.
I go, "Thanks, Dad." So you really want me to sign this and then somehow die? It's like buying art.
We don't personalize them more often than not. Because eventually, odds are your book does. A few of them find their way to half-price books. I go back and buy them and then use them again for promotional items.
I did learn that if you sign the books in the bookstore for the book signing, that they can't return those.
I was told that too, and it's bull.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, no, they send them
Yeah.
back. They pack it. They put the ones unsigned on top,
Yeah.
and then nobody checks the whole box. So yes, they do send them back.
No, well, good. Then I don't
That's
have to
a
sign
lie your publisher tells you to get you to buy more.
Oh no, I didn't. I believe me. That's not. I actually in my book, and you'll get a copy. Is it's already pre-signed.
Okay, there you go.
I did that so I wouldn't have to sign it. Well, before we go, where can I find you, Dayna?
DaynaSteele.com, DaynaSteele. So DaynaSteele.com, at Dayna Steele on Twitter, Dayna Steele on Facebook. It's a brand, Dayna Steele.
I want to thank Dayna for joining us on the podcast. I think that's the most celebrity names ever dropped at any one given time here on the podcast. We certainly appreciate her time with us. We hope to see you each and every Tuesday when we bring another expert to come on and talk about the realities of the world. You can find us at realitycheckpodcast.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Get us on iTunes. We'll see you next week. Thanks.